Welcome to part 2 of our school mini album. And I mentioned that our spine or our hinges were going to be a little bit different. So I did a lot of pre-scoring because I didn't want to get on the camera, mess up, and then have to start again. And I'm going to try and bring my board in so that you can see the numbers a little bit better without hopefully getting too close. And let's see, I have to look around. Okay, so what we're going to do is, one thing with this album from Brenda, if you notice, remember, while we were making the pages, you have got, especially when we start with this very first one, we have got a lot of thickness here. She's got a lot of different folding ends. And then we have a lot of larger waterfalls. And the hinges, sometimes our 1/2-inch hinge, I just don't feel is enough to hold that amount of weight. So what we're going to do is I started with my 12-inch piece of paper for my hinge. Excuse me. And our pages are 8 inches, so I cut this at 7 7/8 width. 12 inches long by 7 7/8 long. So we're going to start our scoring at 1/4. Or 1 1/4. Like I said, let me bring this down as I walk you through. 1 1/4, and then 1/2. I always start with my 1/4 inch and end with the 1/4 inch. One thing about our hinges, we're not doing the 1/2 inch. We're doing 5/8 of an inch. So 1/2 inch is 4/8. We're just going to move it one line over. We're still going to have our 1/2 inch gusset. Then we're going to have 5/8, 5/8, 1/2 inch. 5/8, 5/8, 1/2 inch. One way to do that is start at your 1 1/4, 1 1/2, and you're going to count over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5/8 of an inch falls in between your 2 1/4, so it'd be 2 1/8 of an inch. You can count over 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to hit 3/4. Then you're going to want from 3/4 to 1/4 is a 1/2. There's our 1/2 inch gusset. Now we need to go back to our 5/8. So we just ended at 3/4. Now we're going to count over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lands between your 3/4 and your 4. So we have 7/8. Then we want another 5/8. So we're going to go to 4 1/2. So 4 1/2 now to 5 is our 1/2 inch gusset. So you're going to score at 5. And I'll put these measurements down in the description. Then we're going to count over again. So we want our 5/8 and 5/8. So we're going to go between the 1/2 inch and the 3/4. And if you on your scoreboard, it'll just be right between there. So 5/8. Then we're going to go over 5 more, which is going to be 6 1/4 will be your next score. So now we need our 1/2 inch gussets. 6 1/4. So now we're going to go over 3/4. So now we just scored at 6 3/4. Now we need the 2 5/8. So we're going to score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we're at 5/8 in between your 1/4 and your 1/2. Score it right there at 5/8. 7 5/8. So now we need another 5/8. So that's going to be 8 inches. And then 8 inches to a 1/2 inch gives you your 1/2 inch gusset. So 1/2. Now you're going to count over 5 to 5/8. That's 9 1/8. Another 5/8 will be 9 3/4. And we're going to end with that 1/4 inch. So now we're at 10. So let me go back over that for you. So start at 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 2 1/8, 2 3/4, 3 1/4, 3 7/8, 4 1/2, 5. 5 5/8, in between your 1/2 inch and 3/4, then 6 1/4, 6 3/4, 7 5/8, just count over your 5, and then 8 inches. Then we're going to go to 8 1/2 because we need 1/2 inch. Then we're going to go to 9 1/8, 9 3/4, and 10. Okay, so now let's go ahead and lift up the camera. Excuse me. And like on your ends where you started and ended with your 1/4 inch, because they're smaller, I like to start scoring that end up and then scoring my other 1/4 inch up. Just like that. So they're basically turned in. Now we're going to go ahead and start with our first, these 2 5/8 inch. We're going to pinch them together. And then you'll be able to push back on that 1/4 inch, and you'll see now how this little lip is formed. And that's where your first page is going to sit on this hinge. Now, as you can see, now you've got, you have 5/8 inch instead of just a 1/2 inch on each side, which actually gives you another 1/4 inch. And that's going to give you extra holding power for those heavy pages, especially the ones Brenda loves to do lots of waterfalls. And you do want some extra holding power on that hinge. So now we're just going to pinch together the next 2 5/8 to make that next hinge. The next ones. Now basically when you make your hinges bigger like this, it works great for albums that are bulky. Your pages are very heavy and thick, or there's, you know, a lot to them like these. Or you're doing an 8x9 album. I'm doing an 8x9 album, so I will be using a hinge such as this because your pages are normally heavier. Now, I never make my outer book cover until I make my hinges, because I don't know how big I need to cut my spine for my book until your hinges are made. So there you have it. One side is longer. So we're going to turn this over and using your 1/2 inch score tape, and I will be using my 1/4 inch score tape. And I'm going to go in between those 5/8 inch. And that's why I'm using my 1/2 inch. And that's another thing I like. I've got some extra holding power because I'm using a little bit wider of score tape. So if you just remember to skip 1 score tape, and then you're going to skip 2 and score tape, skip 2 score tape, skip 2 score tape, skip 2 score tape. And then my 3/8 inch score tape will go on these 1/2 inch gussets. Excuse me, allergies are terrible, terrible right now with everything just starting to bloom and all the dust blowing. Okay, so now on those 1/2 inch gussets is where my 3/8 inch score tape will go. And then I like to lay down my 1/4 inch right on those 2 1/4 inch score lines. Now this is also where a lot of people, if you are using Tyvek or you feel that you need to strengthen it, then you can lay it down. I stopped using it years ago. Now we're going to go ahead. This is another reason I like the different size score tapes. Now I'm going to remove my 1/2 inch backing off my score tape. kind of pushing my ends in case anything is hanging over. And because it's easier to work with, I don't like to release any other score tape yet. Then I turn it to the side, and then I just start to make my hinges. And as long as you have not removed the backing, nothing else will stick but what you're wanting to stick, and that's your 5/8 of an inch hinges. Now when you do go bigger like this, you are adding width to your spine, but you're also making it so you have a lot more room to really embellish and really add to your book. And you know your pages are going to hold on strong because you've given it some extra holding power. But it will cut down on the size of the tag that you're going to use in your pocket pages, because that's 1/4 of an inch the page will be sitting on. So if that bothers you, then you might just want to go back to your 1/2 inch. Personally, I like the fact that I know my pages are going to be firmly attached. Now I just turn it back over. Clean up those edges as I go. Remove the backings. And it doesn't really matter what size you use or what adhesive. You could even use if you had a good wet adhesive that doesn't soak through your paper. But I just go ahead and put a few more strips down because you're going to be overlapping also. And I always start with this wider piece. Now make sure you push down though, because you don't want to mess up that 1/4 inch on each one of these. So you'll probably just want to help your hinges go back the opposite directions. Whoops, if I take that off. And these 5/8 of an inch hinges are about your limit with a 12-inch piece of paper without having to add on any additional length, because that's about all you can get. And you can only get about these 5 pages. So now I'm just going to go down, work my hinges, and I'm using the Cartabella cardstock, so I know I can do this because it's the linen texture. Okay, now we're going to want to go ahead and put the score tape. Most of the time I would use my 1/4 inch, but because I've added the extra inch, that's another thing I really like, I'm going to be able to use my 3/8 of an inch score tape, and I put it about 1/16 of an inch from the edge, from the very top of my hinge. And that also is going to guarantee my page is going to be really stuck on there. When I make my larger books or I make heavy books, you've heard the expression hanging on a thread. Sometimes I feel that's what those, only a, smaller hinge, the 1/2 inch. Sometimes I feel like my page is just hanging on. So this extra 1/4 of an inch really will make a difference. Okay, now I just want to get the back of my hinge ready. So one thing that I'm going to use is my 8.5 by 11 inch score tape. and I'm just going to lay it on my score tape here. This is really easy to cut on your cutter. So I'm just going to mark where I need to cut. So I'm going to just cut that on my marks. So now I have a piece going to fit perfectly. Let's trim it a little bit more so it doesn't hang over the edge. And I do carry the 8.5 by 11 in the store at countrycraftcreations.com. I really like it for this part of the construction of my albums and my album covers. It saves my other score tape, and it's $1.85 a sheet, and it takes only about 2 to make your album. So, and then I don't use my rolls. And I'm getting superb coverage. Superb. Make sure that score tape's down. Make sure it's all down. And I don't have yucky fingers. Me and glue, it gets everywhere. Now I want to go ahead and just clean up, goodness, this, how it's sticking over my score tape edges that weren't clean. And then I always check to make sure if it's not even at this end, I just trim it. So there is your spine or your hinges. Now we will know what size to cut our chipboard for our spine. So I'm going to measure this, and this measures 2 3/4. And so I'm going to cut my spine just 1/8 of an inch larger. So I'm going to cut my spine for my chipboard 2 7/8 wide by 8.5 inches long. And what I'm going to do now is I'm putting in my original album cover tutorial instead of doing it again. And the only thing different is that Brenda made this same cover. And I'm going to give you the dimensions to cut your chipboard for this cover. She took a chalkboard. She took a vintage chalkboard, but you could get just a chalkboard from Joann's, Hobby Lobby, and paint it and decorate it to your liking, and then put it on the front of your book. And she took an old belt and used it for the handle. And you can go back through her video, and I'll link it on over so that you can do the walkthrough and you'll see. So you're going to make this cover, but I'm going to put my original tutorial. It shows it so much better. But you're going to first of all cut your spine pieces 2 7/8 wide by 8.5 inches long. And then your album cover pieces will be 8.5 by 8.5. You'll need to cut 2 pieces of chipboard. If you're going to double your chipboard, then you will cut 2 pieces at 2 7/8 by 8.5 and 4 pieces of 8.5 by 8.5. Sometimes on heavier albums you might want to double your chipboard. Not necessary, but you can, especially if you're going to put the chalkboard up on there. So I will put that other movie in, and then you'll just follow it just like my other video. And then when your page is in your book, you notice, so this is different than a side load. You have this top load and you have it open, quite a large page. So you're going to, and actually these are easier, I think, to put on your spine. So when this is down on your book, you're just going to bring your page, and I start with my last one, leaving about 1/16 of an inch from the bottom. You lay it down. You're going to lay your page down, and then you will just push it. Now you can see there's a lot of thickness, so make sure you're leaving that about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. And then when it's on here, then it closes because of the score tape. And now you will have, see, this is a really thick page. Now you will have your pocket page. And then you'll be able to cut your tags. And I would probably cut mine 8 and an 1/8, and then 7 and 7/5 of an inch, so 7 3/4 of an inch. Tuck it down in there, see if it hits against this hinge. You may have to trim the width is all. And then you just move up to your next one. Like I said, these are actually easier than the side load pocket pages. You just put it down on there. Make sure you're 1/2 inch, I mean an 1/8 of an inch to 1/16. Lay your page down on top of the last one, and then push down. And then that's all there is to putting your book together. And then you can go on to decorate, and you'll see that you have plenty of room for tags, flowers, lots of decorations. You can put those waterfalls and really deck them out, and then you can really make those different things like Brenda did. Well, we'll do after you make your cover. I'm rambling on. I apologize. After you make the cover, then I will do the next video. It'll be video number 3, because this will take you a little bit with the cover also. Then I will do the inside decoration of our cover. So I hope you liked this, and I'll go ahead and get that all put in, and then I'll move on to our 3rd video, which will be decorating the inside cover. I decided not to add in the video for the cover tutorial. I realized with the flap over, it might be a little confusing. So let me move things out of the way, and I'm just going to make it with you. So I've taken 2 pieces of 12 by 12, and I know it's going to be hard to see on here. I apologize, but I have to use white because my album's white, my cover's white. I'm going to put together these papers. So they're cut 12 by 10.5. So my cover is 8.5 by 8.5. So I'm going to have an inch at the top and an inch at the bottom. Let me go ahead and put my mat. I don't really like to use anything but a flat surface, but I know that's going to be too hard to see, because I have been going along and stuck my bone folder down through the paper off the edge. So I'll just have to be really careful so you can see. So 2 pieces of your cardstock for your cover, and you're going to want them to be the 12 inches long, and I always make it 2 inches wider than my chipboard. So this is 10.5 by 12. And I've cut 2 of the chipboard, 8.5 by 8.5. And then I've cut my spine. And I cut it just that 1/8 of an inch wider than my hinges. But it is going to be longer. And that's good. You want it to be longer. Then you have room to punch a hole if you're going to hang any charms or anything, or dangles, if you like to do that. So we have our 3 pieces, 8.5 by 8.5, front and back. And then our 2 7/8 by 8.5. Then I have my 2 10.5 by 12 inch pieces of paper. That way I have an inch at the top and an inch at the bottom. And I like to use my quilting ruler for this, because it has great markings. And I'm going to grab my 1/4 inch score tape, and I'm going to join these 2 pieces of paper together. This way when they overlap, yeah, I still have my arms look better though from the first video I did of the pages. You want this to overlap so it catches on both sides, and you will want to get them pretty straight top and bottom. Now we're going to take and lay out our top and bottom pieces. I'm going to grab my 8.5 by 11 inch sheets of score tape. You'll see how much faster this goes. Oh, I have that piece removed before. So you should only need the 2 pieces And then once I get these down, you'll be able to see better with the chipboard contrast. So I can move those. So I'm going to start with my score tape, and I'm actually going to cut this down just a hair to fit. And I absolutely love these score tape sheets. You'll see in a moment. You've got guaranteed hold on your whole chipboard. And you only have to put it down once. Now that was the piece I had left over from when we did our hinges. So I'm going to cut the next piece for my other cover, and then I'll have plenty left over when I cut it to put on there. Because I'll cut that off and I'll just have to trim the length. And so I took the 8.5 by 11 inch piece and just cut the end off. So that's my spine. So with 2 pieces, you can get this done so much quicker. And if I'm making the 6 by 6 albums, I like my 8-inch score tape that comes in a package of 5. So when you're wanting to get a lot of albums made, and now is the time to start. We're actually heading into July, and if you're wanting Christmas gifts, you've got to start, or you won't get them done. And that's what on Scrapbookers of Country Craft Creations, we'll be holding our online crop in July, and it is going to focus on Christmas in July and what you can start making now in order to get those Christmas presents done and out the door. So if you haven't joined us on Scrapbookers of Country Craft Creations on Facebook, you'll want to join us. That's also where I post all the measurements, and we have other team members that post their tutorials. Now if you are not on Facebook, that's fine. Let me know and I can email you what you need also. I always start now with my spine piece. I'm going to take my quilting ruler. See, one thing I like with the quilting ruler, you have so many different lines of increments. So I like to take the 1 inch and see it has like to me I call those my stitch marks. I always know just to lay my stitch marks down, and that's my inch from the bottom. And I'm just going to, and I have more room to hold it down. I'm going to center this spine piece, turn it over. I like to use my arms just to hold my ruler. Then I butt it up against my ruler, and there you go. Now, you want to always have enough space in between your chipboard. And if you use a 1/4 inch score tape, not only is it your guide, but it's also going to help with when you put down your paper on the inside of your album. And you know your album cover, it's not going to crack. You're not going to have those issues because you have your spacer. Now you can leave that spacer on there if it helps you with a visual, or you can remove it. You just want to remove it before we wrap it. So I just removed the backing. And these, like I said, the sheets are available at countrycraftcreations.com. And they are $1.85 each, and they have free shipping. Okay, and we'll just move on over now to this side. Grab my next one. So if you make a lot of albums, you're going to see also it saves on wear and tear of your wrist with putting score tape down, taking score tape backing off. And you've got quite the coverage for the surface. Oh, what I do with my other bone folder. So I'm just going to go over it. Actually, my schooling ruler. Covers more surface. Okay, remove this. I don't want to cause any issues. What I do now is I'm going to take my 1/4 inch score tape. Oh, we need to do one thing really quick. Let me grab my tweezers, or you might have a Cricut tool or a Silhouette tool, and you do want to remove your space, the spacer, what you used, if you used score tape. This again, so when your paper folds over, it will catch on the chipboard and it's going to hold it down. And I prefer 1/2 inch. Again, you don't have to use 1/2 inch. Now, I'm going to be trimming those edges, but before I do, I'm just going to make sure my score tape's down. And I'm just going to use a bone folder and sort of do a scoring along these edges, especially where the two have met. I like to push that down a bit. And then I just bring it up and push against the chipboard. So you should start see how that helped give it a scoring look. Oops. And then on my corners, I just take and I just trim them off. Keeping in mind you need about 1/8 of an inch to fold over that chipboard. Oh, yeah, and I forgot, you can trim these edges. I probably should have shown you that. If you feel that your paper's too long, one side actually was a little bit longer, but that's okay. Now, I picked this up from Terry. She was on our design team. She was a guest designer, and she was with us for a short time, and she did a beautiful, beautiful tutorial for us using the Enchanted Gardens. And she actually took a wet glue, I really loved it, along the top edge. And I talked to her, and she said this also, she believes, helps keep your paper from cracking if you're using a pattern paper. So I'm going to try it in this video. And I'm going to see, she says it really helps grab it over that edge. So I'm going to push up. You don't want to do a lot of the glue. Oh, I forgot. You've got to take off all your score tape. Got a little ahead of myself here on the sides. Okay. Okay, just took my sides off. Now you just want to kind of work that paper over that edge, and I pulled down just to ensure I get it over my edge. Oh, it's sticking to everything today. I like to make sure I do get it over that edge. My bone folder. Now let's go ahead and just finish removing all of our score tape. Like I said, I got a little ahead of myself and forgot this step. And then my other design team member, Cheryl, and I'm going to be bringing this in. I know you can buy it other places, but I, of course, will have best prices, I hope, is the Art Glitter Glue, and I'm in love with it. And I'll tell you, you know me, I am not a glue person, but I really like it. So I'm pulling back on my cover, and I'm going to push now my chipboard over that edge. I'm going to bring that in so that I can make sure it's going to line up. And I'm going to go ahead with the glue along the bottom. And again, let's push up on our sides. And we're going to just do the same. Pull it up and over. And I'm thinking that glue is going to actually be really nice to hold that chipboard to the paper on the edge. So thank you for sharing that, Terry. And then on this side, let's go ahead and push in that, so that corner, so it's covering your chipboard. And fold that right over. And that is one reason I hadn't been using the pattern papers on my edge, on my covers, because they tend to crack. But then I watched Terry's and how she used this glue, and it really, she's using Graphic 45, so I was really impressed. I'm gonna have to give that a try. And so far, I think I'm liking it right now. And again, let's get those corners pushed in. Cover our chipboard. Make sure it's lying flat. Now in our creases, now you already have a sticky substance, your score tape there. So you're just going to push that paper down into those, into that divot there between your spine and your page. Now if you've used this for spacing, you're going to see you can lay that cover flat and you shouldn't have any cracking. And again, that will depend on all your paper, but I'm telling you, I'm really liking glue along that edge. It really did. It brought the paper right on top of this chipboard, and it's smooth as can be. There are no wrinkles. Terry, thank you. That is such a wonderful tip. Love it, love it. So that's Terry Nelson from Terry's Scrapbooks. And I love learning something new that makes our finished product look even more professional. So here we have our cover, and it's 8.5 wide. So you're going to want to now cut some more of your paper. And I'm just going to continue on with the front. With the same. I'm going to use my 8.5 by 11. If you didn't know, we do carry the linen textured now in the 8.5 by 11, just like the 12 by 12, and it makes it so you have a lot less waste. So I'm going to trim off 1/8 of an inch. A lot less waste than cutting that 12 by 12 each time. I just cut off 1/8 of an inch and it fits beautifully. So now it comes in the middle of the spine. So what I'm also going to do is I'm not going to cut my second piece. I'm going to lay it down, and it will overlap quite a bit there in the middle, but then I will have a nice smooth front and back surface. Actually, let me just take a hair off so that it's still, in the middle. And I only took about 1/4 of an inch off of the right hand side one, so it overlaps beautifully. Now my seam will be in the middle and I won't have any seams on each side. But if you're doing an album cover that is a magnetic fold over, you of course won't be able to get that look because you're working with a bigger cover. Unfortunately, our full sheets of score tape I don't use on the inside. I guess you could. To be honest with you, I have never tried it, so we're going to try it. I think anything to make it a little simpler. I'm just going to mark where I want to cut this off. Now, what I did was when I cut this, I did cut it a little bit short. And I am going to have to use one piece of 1/4 inch score tape. Like I said, I've never really used it on the inside cover. And some of you are probably thinking it's overkill. I'm thinking of it as being quick, simple, and less waste of my roll. Except for I do want this more on the edge. I shouldn't have cut it so short. And here goes. Let's see if we love how it works. Well, I am thinking I do love how it works. Wow, what a nice finish. Instead of seeing lines on my score tape, even though I'm going to hide it. Man, and that's down. Let me cut the other one. Like I mentioned, you don't have to use score tape, these sheets, in the whole construction, but this does make it go by, as you can see, a lot quicker. If you are an avid score tape user, if you are okay with using glue, you might not want to go this route. But like I said, my projects, when I use just straight glue, are actually an absolute mess. Because I tend to get glue everywhere. And when you're working with white paper and glue tends to pick up dirt. Okay, I'm still, just like my score tape, when I'm using it, I'm going to have to just make sure it's not sticking over the edge. White paper is like a magnet for dirt. Oh, and that's one of my concerns, is if I use glue and it picks up one thing, it's going to go all over my white paper. And then my whole album is going to feel like it's just ruined, even though it's probably not. Okay. But also, for videos, this does help bring the time by faster. We're going to line this up top to bottom and matching our paper in the center. loving it. Okay, we just like we did on the first one, we need to find where our book bends. Still, I can bend it over quite a ways. I don't have to worry about any cracking. What I'm doing is I'm just making sure it's on the chipboard. Now you can go along your edges, make sure everything's adhered down. And now it's time for our hinges. Now also, if you are now going to use pattern paper and you want pattern paper here, so you would not put your hinges down until your pattern paper is down. Center it once you get an eyeball where you like it and you don't want pattern paper underneath it. And you can remove the back of your score tape. And then I do like to use, no, not that one. You can use a permanent marker because these have a nice rounded edge and they're great for pushing down your hinges without worrying about poking through your hinges. Or I use a rubber tip for my Cricut. I had a tool, just don't know where it's at. You just want to get those down. And there you have the cover to your album. So there is your cover. And the next step that I do is I take my pages and I like to mount them before I put them in my book. But I decided, since you probably want to see how to put your pages in, that this one time I'll live. I can go ahead and get my pages put in. My only problem is I need to, gonna have to run up, let's see, and get my iPad so I can see how Brenda put hers in. So I will be right back. All right, so go through now and see which pages you want. If you want it to be identical to the order we made them, or if you're gonna change it a little bit. You might see mine's changed a little bit, and I apologize. It's because I had really messed up on one of the pages after. So I'm just changing where my waterfall page in this one goes. So you'll just want to go through and start with your last page. So go through, choose which order. You'll find that these are actually a little easier to put in, these top loading pages, because you're not dealing with, you know, the pocket that goes through. You're going to want to make sure down here at the bottom, you're going to leave about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want it to hit the bottom. Some of these pages have a lot of flaps and they're quite large. So I go ahead and remove my score tape. It's already open, so it's going to slide very nicely on. Just make sure when you put it down, you have the bottom of the hinge and the bottom of the closed end. So you have a closed end and an open end. Make sure the hinge hits that bottom. Go ahead and get it situated so it's that 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. Then I just lay it on there. I lay my page down and I push. These are quite easy to put on. I think a lot easier. Now you have your pocket page up at the top. Now your hinge, you'll notice, does come in a little bit further. Actually, it doesn't hit like on a pocket page because it's sealed off. But now this opening isn't quite going to be your 8 inches. So you'll want to measure when you go to do your inserts. how I measure is to about where it closed. So I'm going to be able to get a 7¼ inch by okay, see, I'm going to make it exactly 8 inches. So you're going to go, I'm going to make mine 8 inches long by 7¼ inches wide, stick it down in and see how it fits, and then you can trim them. So we're going to go to the next one. So this is where my that large waterfall we made. And then I had that flat page. And once again, I'm going to remove the backing of the score tape. I'm going to start by sliding it down where it won't touch, but my closed band, about 1/8 of an inch, but lay it down. You're going to want to make sure your pages are even top to bottom so you don't have crooked pages. By laying it down, you're already establishing how your pages are going to lay. And if you notice with that bigger hinge, you're going to get a lot flatter page. And where you're working with pages that have tons of flaps, you may have made one before and it's sticking almost straight up, and that's frustrating. That's where you want to make a bigger hinge and your 1/2 inch gusset, and you want to make sure that you're leaving that 1/8 of an inch space so that your page has room to move. And doing this, I think you're going to be a lot happier. I know when I make my large albums, I get a lot of comments and I get a lot of questions on how did you get your pages to lay down so flat. Well, it's because I make my hinge a little bit bigger, and I actually learned this from another one of our design team members, Cheryl, of Cheryl's Paper Creations. She's very, very experienced, been around making beautiful, just stunning mini albums. And she's got a lot of great tips too. So again, do you see how nice your pages are now starting to lay? Okay, I very seldom just stick with this 1/2 inch unless it's a 6x6 album. And I think you can see why. It just makes for a nicer album. And I'm going to have a lot of room to just deck this out. And I'm also using, for mine, I'm going to be using Blue Fern Studios Courtship Lane, and it's a thicker, much thicker paper. And so I'm going to have no problems with my pages laying flat. Oh, you know what I did? Let's see something. I kind of messed up here on mine. So actually, I still will be able to use that. Now this is our first one, that very, very heavy one. And you're going to really like how a big, heavy page will still lay flat. It wants to stick before I want to allow it. I always want my pages to lay over. See, everything's going to go back and forth. Very nice. See, that's where I messed up. I'm going to have to really fix that one. And your cover isn't going to take a lot of encouraging just to hold flat because you have plenty of room. Now on the inside of Brenda's cover, she has, and we're going to make that, let me just get to the front of her book. On the front here, so you always want to make your inside covers kind of an extension of your pages because it just adds more real estate. And she has put on the back cover and the front cover what looks like a little backpack, basically. It's a flap. So we're going to start with the right hand side, and one thing I did is I accidentally left off this page in mine. I put the wrong page in, and I'll tell you what, I really like this page. I'm going to show you how to make the other two, but I'm actually going to be sealing that partly down, and I'm now going to adhere this page to my front cover with the matte, because I really like this design of Brenda's. So I'm going to show you what she did on her back cover, and you're going to duplicate it for the front cover. Okay, I'm going to get some more paper and I'll be right back. On her front cover, she did what looks like a little backpack because it's school. So she has a flap that is going this way, and mine's probably longer, so I'm going to remeasure that before I give you the measurements. And I had cut mine for this book, I actually cut it at 7. I cut it by 7 by 8.5, and actually I took off about 1/8 of an inch, so it's 8 3/8 wide. And you're just going to have to figure that width out because you don't want it to go in the seam where your book is closing. So you'll trim it, or you may want to have it a little more centered. And again, you may want to cut this down even shorter. So mine's probably a little bit longer than what Brenda. I think Brenda was more of a 6.5, so she has a 6-inch flap. This gives me a 6.5-inch flap because you do want to score 1/2 inch at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and leave mine longer. It gives me more room for flowers and embellishments. Then she has a magnetic flap that will come up and close this. And before we stick it down, because like I showed you, I'm going to actually use a page we made as my back cover, I decided. So she has, if you're going to mirror her cover, then what she did on the back page, the exact same size, but you're going to put it at the bottom instead of at the top. And then you're going to take your little strip. Mine's 1.5 inches by 6 3/4, and then I scored it 1/2 inch. And I am going to put this on my front cover, but for the back cover you would just reverse it, have your flap at the bottom. So I will do the front cover with you because you do want to put these down before you lay down your pattern paper. And after you decide your length, like I said, mine's 7. If you want to mimic more of Brenda's, go 6.5, scored at 1/2 of an inch. And then let's apply our adhesive, and we do want to go ahead and cut off those corners a little bit so that they'll lay a lot nicer underneath our pattern paper. Again, I'm just going to, well, first, what I want to do here, I want to decide how close to the edge. Do I want it more in the centered? And I think I do. So I'm just going to leave it there. Lift the top. Once I put it where I want it. And let me just get my magnet out. I know there's some magnets. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and score tape the bottom here, and I'm just going to do a quick measurement to find the middle of my book. Just going to be 4. Well, because of the way the spine, it does increase your size just a hair. It's not going to be absolutely perfect, but I'm going to go about 4, actually 4.5, because I'm accounting for this 1/4 inch right there that we put between the cover of the chipboard and the spine, so it did make it appear a little larger. I'm just going to attach my closure piece. And then my magnet. So now what I'm going to do is put the first one down, and they are stuck together. I like to put them enough distance from the top so that can be, somebody can grab a hold of it. Then I'm going to remove the second magnet's backing, lift and put that underneath. That way it's good and hidden. Don't want any chance of that to move. And you're going to repeat now that same thing for the back. And I've already put my score tape here, but I can't put it down till I put my pattern paper. And this is going to go on my back side. And I'm going to get this fixed with glue so that I can still have a tag pull out of this one also, because I really like that page and I can't believe I did that. But we all make mistakes, but my book's definitely not ruined. And there you have your school mini album. It should be laying nice and flat, almost in a cascading spiral. And you can go through now with Brenda's video walkthrough or on her blog at the Cross-Eyed Cricket, and you'll see the still pictures. That way you can look at each picture if you're wanting to decorate it the same way Brenda has decorated it, and it will give you the nice walkthrough. And you can go through now and make your different tags, pockets, to go in the pockets. You can make photo mats, tons of things. Now we do have a couple that we already made, and that is our waterfalls. So that is another thing you do not want to put down until you've got your pattern paper, and that's why we've marked these different items of where the waterfall, and I just put it there because it's grabbing that magnet naturally. And I believe this one went on a pocket, and it was actually, mine was on the back of this cute little page, but because I messed it up, I will be probably just putting this somewhere else in my book, because we don't ever want to waste a waterfall, and that would be a really good place. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I do apologize. I know it was a little different than most because I was working with someone else's creation and we were recreating it, but I think that you're really going to like this album. It's really, there's a lot to it. It's something you can make with tons of paper, and I'm making mine, like I said, with Blue Ferns Courtship Manor, and I'll do a walkthrough when I'm all finished with mine. And thank you for waiting while I went through fixing my camera. Well, that might just go on the front after all. It seems to like it there. And don't forget your belly bands. You have those belly bands on the one page, again, that we did in the tutorial. And I can't wait to come back and do another one with you. We'll wait and see what our next project is. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.